Hello, so good morning, everyone. My name is Débora Mushawa Saad, and I am a professor at the Institute of Computing at Fluminense Federal University, UFF, or UFI, as we call it here in Brazil. It's our pleasure to host the International Workshop on Artificial Intelligence and Innovative Solutions for Digital Healthcare, organized by myself and by Professor Leticia de Oliveira from the Institute of Biomedical Sciences at UFI. This workshop is organized by our print project supported by CAPES, the Coordination for the Improvement of Higher Educational Personnel from the Ministry of Education in Brazil. I would like to thank the participation and support of Professor Andrea Leticia, who is the Dean of Postgraduate Research and Innovation at UFI, representing in this event Professor Antônio Cláudio Lucas da Nóbrega, UFI's rector. So I'd like to invite Professor Andrea Leticia to open our activities. Please, Andrea.
Hello, good morning, everyone here. I would like to thank the invitation and say that it's a great pleasure to open this important event in the name of the Universidade Federal Fluminense. I hope you are well, in good health. We are going through difficult moments, and it's really nice to take this special opportunity to meet each other, even being through the computer screen and not in person, and share not only our scientific expertise, but also our friendship and word fraternity. In particular, I have some points to be proud today. At first, it's very grateful to realize that one of the projects of our institutional project, the CAPES Print UFI, that I believe Leticia is going to talk a little about that, is really a robust project, fact that is reflected by the workshop itself, with the participation of external collaborators that work together with our inside people. We welcome all of international invitation from the United Kingdom, from Professor Alex Freitas from Universidade of Kent and Professor Jorge Guinea from Brunel University, London. Also people from Spain, Professor Angel Sanchez from Universidade Rei Juan Carlos, and Professor Pablo Cesar from CWI from Amsterdam. The workshop will certainly open good opportunities to let the foreign people knowing more about the Brazilian work going on, and perhaps it will help increasing the number of those scientific centers collaborating with our research and the students. I hope these talks can serve to stimulate such interaction. I do believe that, and I hope that this is going on to happen. Also, I'm happy to see two women in the coordination of the Priority Project, Professor Débora Saad and Professor Leticia Oliveira. I would like to congratulate both of them. I'm sure that the young academic community needs to look at women like you, serving as inspiration of a scientific academic life for the woman, mainly in the hard areas such as engineering, physics, and computing. I believe that computing is even worse than what happens in physics community. The message for those young people, and mainly to the girls, is do not give up. Doing science a way to enjoy life. I'm sure about that. Other important thing to mention today is that when we planned the CAPES Print UFI project, we try to improve interdisciplinarity within the main study topics in the university, mixing the areas. That was the goal. We put an effort in connecting people from different research areas, as it's the case of health and exact science. It is very nice to realize that we have chosen the right way. The themes of the talks to be presented today in this workshop give us clearly this sexual scenario. To finish, I would like to congratulate the people involved in the organization, the names of Professor Débora and Professor Leticia, and all of the people involved in the workshop organization, mainly consider our bad days, and really thank you all for allowing moments of confidence and trust in science. That's the way. Have a good workshop. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for your very nice and kind words. I hope we really have a nice day with a lot of discussions and share the experience and knowledge between our participants and university and research groups. So I'm going to share now a presentation with you, a very brief presentation. So can you see it?
Yes.
Yes, it's perfect.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about, at first, our workshop. We're going to have two main sessions, one during the morning until noon, where we have presentations from our partners here at UFI, me and Professor Leticia, Professor George, Douglas Matos, Professor Pablo Cesar, Professor Aura Conci, and Paulo. And then we'll have an afternoon session starting at 2 o'clock, and we'll also have presentations from our foreign partners, Professor Alex Freitas, Marcelo Maier, Professor Angel Sanchez, Adriel Araújo, Professor Isabel Davi, and Tayane Ramos. So to start, I'm going to talk a little bit about our CAPES print project, which is coordinated by me and Professor Leticia. And the project title is Artificial Intelligence Applied to Cerebral Signals, Translating Neuroscience to Clinical Practice. So as Professor Andrea said, our project is a sub-project inside a big project that is held by our university, by UFI. So this research project is inside a program from CAPES named PRINT, which aims the internationalization of the graduate programs in Brazil. So the idea is to have international collaboration among between UFI and international partners. So in our project, it has started in the end of 2018, and it is going to last until 2023. In fact, we have finished half of the project time last year. So it's a partnership between the graduate program in computing, which is held by the Institute of Computing, and the graduate program in biomedical sciences, which is represented here by Professor Leticia and other colleagues from the Biomedical Institute. So we have partnerships, as Professor Andrea has briefly said, with universities in the United Kingdom, University College London, which is represented by Professor Janaína Mourão, University of Kent, represented by Professor Alex Freitas, Brunel University London, represented by Professor George Guinea, and we also have participation from University Rey Juan Carlos in Spain, represented by Professor Angel Sanchez. And more recently, we have the participation of CWI, which is a research center in the Netherlands, represented by Professor Pablo Cesar. So this project has budget basically for funding international mobility between UFI professors and students and our international partners. So we have postdoc scholarships, and Professor Isabel Davi has spent some time in UCL in 2019 and 20. We have also PhD sandwich scholarships, and we have also some students gone abroad. So Douglas Matos was in Brunel in 2019. Marcelo Maia is now at University of Kent starting last year. And Adriel Santos is going to be in University Rey Juan Carlos this year, by the end of this year, 2021. We also have fundings for foreign research missions, so we can have Brazilian researchers going abroad, as done by Professor Alexandre Plastino, who was University of Kent in 2019, and I visited Brunel University in London, and also in 2019. And we also have some budget to bring our international partners to visit UFI and spend some time with us in Brazil. So we already had Professor George Guinea visiting UFI in 2019, and we hope he will be back soon in the second semester of this year. So we already have these kinds of fundings for probably 2 more years of project. And very briefly, our project main goals include the design and development of new solutions for neuroimaging analysis using artificial intelligence techniques. solutions for medical imaging signal processing analysis for helping diagnosis of mental disorders, breast cancer, thyroid problems, and cardiovascular diseases. We have also been working with automatic classification of genes related to aging. We have been developing new solutions for clinical decision support systems applied to elderly diseases, and also new multisensory media systems applied to healthcare therapies. So today we'll have a lot of presentations talking about several of these research sub-projects that our groups have been working on. Specifically, my research and my research group at UFI, our research group at the Computing Institute at UFI, is done basically in our lab, which is called MediaCom Research Lab. So our lab was founded in 2003. It's a partnership between the Institute of Computing and the School of Engineering at our university. And we focus on research development and innovation on computer networks, multimedia, and digital healthcare. So specifically in digital healthcare, we have been working on multisensory media systems applied to new healthcare therapies, physiological signal processing for helping diagnosis of mental disorder, medical image analysis for helping diagnosis and treatment of breast cancer and more recently COVID-19, clinical decision support systems applied to elderly diseases, and also remote patient monitoring using wireless barrier networks and Wi-Fi networks. So I'm going to illustrate some of this research that we are doing, and we'll have, of course, more details during our presentations during the day. So talking about the idea of providing new healthcare therapies, we are working on integrating multimedia content and sensory effects, for example, scent, light, wind, vibration, and other kinds of effects, and also providing the idea of the user interacting with different interaction modes. So we can use voice recognition, gesture recognition, face expression recognition, or eye motion for the user to interact with this kind of content. And we are also working on artificial intelligence techniques for multimedia content analysis in order to facilitate the authoring and development of those applications. So our idea is to build applications that could be used to provide multimodal cognitive stimulations for elderly patients that could have dementia or Alzheimer or mild cognitive impairment. And this research is being have been done together with Professor George Guinea. We have Douglas Matos, who is going to talk about it a little bit later. Talking about the idea of diagnosing mental disorders, this is a work we have been started recently with Professors Leticia de Oliveira, Mirtes Pereira, and Alexandre Placino. So we have worked with machine learning techniques for analyzing physiological signals, basically heart rate and skin conductance, to diagnose PTSD symptoms related to violence. So PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. So we have used a database that was collected by the Biomedical Institute and have analyzed those data in order to predict PTSD symptoms. So I believe that Professor Leticia is going to talk about AI related to diagnosing mental disorders. Another research that we are involved is about screening, diagnosis, and treatment of breast cancer. So we have been developing AI techniques to analyze temperature time series acquired by dynamic thermography images of the breast in order to early diagnose malign tumors. So this is a research mainly carried on by Professor Aura Conci, who is going to do a presentation for us later. And recently we have the participation of Professor Angel Sanchez. And Adriel Araújo, who is our PhD student, is also going to talk about this in the afternoon. Another project that we have been involved on is about diagnosing dementia, Alzheimer, and MCI using artificial intelligence models that could allow the early diagnosis, especially of MCI, that could evolve to a dementia patient later. So we have been working on dynamic models that could adapt to new patient attributes. So while this system, this clinical decision support system, is used in practice by the medical team, they can introduce new different kinds of data for the patients, and the system could automatically adapt its inference model to consider this new data to also predict and indicate some diagnosis of these diseases. So this work is done together with Professor Flavio Seixas, Professor Aura Conci, and our medical colleagues, Professor Dr. Gerson Lax and Yolanda Boechat. And finally, another subject that we are working on is about remote patient monitoring. So we have been working with W-bands, which are wireless body area networks, where users could have and use sensors and actuations that could be implemented in wearable devices or even in implanted devices that could be implanted inside the human's body. And we are working on new routing protocols and new communication solutions for those kind of networks in order to save energy from the wireless nodes and also to avoid tissue heating, which is a well-known problem that could happen when people use those kind of sensors implanted in their body. So this work is done together with Professor Célio Albuquerque and some students of the Institute of Computing. So I finish here my presentation. This is a very brief introduction about our project, which is about artificial intelligence applied to healthcare. I would like to thank very much our partners and the ones who are participating in this workshop today. Thank you very much for your availability to be here and give presentations and share your knowledge and research with us. So thank you very much. And now I invite Professor Leticia de Oliveira to give her presentation.
Okay, I will share my screen with you. Just a moment. Is it working? Yes?
Yes, Leticia.
Okay. So first of all, I would like to thank Andrea for being here with us and for the nice words. Thank you very much, Andrea. I'd like also to thank Deborah for organizing this workshop with us. And all the speakers, we know that your schedule is very busy, so it's an honor to be here with you and all the audience. Well, I am Leticia de Oliveira. I'm full professor at Biomedical Institute at our university. And the idea here is give you a brief overview about our lab, Laboratory of Neurophysiology of Behavior, also known as LabNEC. And this lab has 3 coordinators, myself, Professor Mirtz Pereira, and Professor Isabel Davi. Mirtz will be the chair in the afternoon section, and Isabel will present her work also in the afternoon section. Well, we work with human beings, studying human behavior, and we collect several measures such as psychometrical scales, questionnaires, psychophysiological responses like heart rate, skin conductance, and electromyography, as you can see here. And also, we study brain reactivity, particularly fMRI and EEG. But today, I will talk more about this research project in our lab decoding vulnerability to mental disorders, an artificial intelligence approach. We have been working with this for 10 years from now, and you have a very international and multidisciplinary team, specifically Professor Mary Phillips from Department of Psychiatry in the University of Pittsburgh, Professor Janaína Mourão Miranda from Computer Science Department, University College London. Janaína was supposed to be here today, but she has some health problems. She's okay now, but it was not possible to be here with us today. And this is the people from LabNEC, as you can see, myself, Mitch, Isabel, and Liana and Orlando. Liana and Orlando, they did their PhD with us, applied machine learning in neuroimage. And you have a new acquisition, Daiane Ramos. We hope she will work with us very soon. She's from computer science. Well, mental health disorders are a very serious health problem. First of all, it's a common problem. About a third of population will be diagnosed with some kind of mental disease. It has a early onset, in general, at the end of the adolescence, is disabling and have poor treatment outcomes. So it's a very serious health problem. It's interesting to note that there are some evidence from the literature that in many mental disorders, changes in the brain can appear decades before the major symptoms. It's interesting because you have a window between the symptoms, between the brain alterations and the symptoms. And this window allows intervention, a clinical intervention. So this idea is proposed by RDoC, Research Domain Criteria. And the idea is to find biomarkers like a fingerprint, but in the brain. So find a brain signature that represents vulnerability to mental disorders. As I said, this is important because allowed early intervention. In this picture, we can see better this idea. Here's a normal brain. Here you can see some alterations, some brain alterations before the symptoms and before the diagnosis. And artificial intelligence can perform an early detection in order to allow early intervention, in order to avoid the symptoms or at least delay the symptoms, and improving the patient mental health. We have a lot of works published using machine learning applied to neuroimaging to predict mental disorders or personality traits. Here are some of these papers published by our group. And I will talk about a little more about this specific paper published in 2019. And in this case, we study young subjects with different psychiatric diagnoses and even some of them without diagnosis. In this case, we applied machine learning regression model to predict symptoms. And we were able to predict mania symptoms in this sample. And this is very important because mania symptoms are risk factor for bipolar disorders. The brain region with the highest contribution was prefrontal ventrolateral cortex, which makes sense with the literature. Just an example of the application, the kind of work we did in our lab. So artificial intelligence applied to neuroimaging can help elucidate the neural signatures that represent vulnerabilities to mental disorders. These signatures may constitute early identifiable neurobiomarkers, and these biomarkers can help prevent or diagnose mental disorders. This is the idea, the main idea. there are serious limitations here. First of all, the algorithm make mistakes, and this is a problem because you can't say someone something wrong. So the algorithm should improve, and there are ethical issues regarding this approach. If you tell someone about a vulnerability, you have to offer some treatments, pharmacological or psychotherapeutic treatments. So ethical issues is very important in this area. And as Deborah already mentioned, we start a collaboration. Recently, we started a collaboration with Deborah and Plastino. We are very happy. This is our first study, identifying post-traumatic stress symptoms using physiological signals and data mining. So it's people from computer science in at UFI and us from LabNec, and I'm sure we have a great future in this collaboration. This is our website. People from LabNec, sorry, people are missing here, but just to give you an idea, a large group. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Leticia, for your presentation. I think we're not going to open for questions now. We're going to pass to other presentations, and maybe later we can answer questions if there are some. So now we're going to start with our technical sessions. And the first presentation is going to be given by our dear Professor George Guinea from Brunel University, London, in the United Kingdom. And Professor George is a professor in multimedia computing in the Department of Computer Science at Brunel University. His research activities lie at the confluence of computer science, media, and psychology. In particular, his work focuses on the area of perceptual multimedia quality and how one builds end-to-end communication systems incorporating user perceptual requirements. Dr. Guinea has applied his expertise in areas such as eye tracking, telemedicine, multimodal interaction, and ubiquitous and mobile computing. So it's our pleasure to invite Dr. George Guinea to give his presentation about a multimodal location-aware emergency evacuation assistant. George, please.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you all. Let me start sharing my screen. Okay.
If you'd like to open your camera too, it would be nice.
Yes, I will like to open my camera. Of course, I would like to open my camera. Hang on. I'm not good at multitasking, so let me open my camera first. I beg your pardon. Right. Okay, camera open. All right, so hi everybody. Now sharing the screen. Okay, first show all windows. Where is it?
We have a button in the middle of the bottom of the screen.
Okay, yeah. So can you see the? Can you see the screen now?
Yes.
Great.
Perfect.
Great. Thank you, Deborah, and thank you, to all my Brazilian colleagues and from further afield for giving me, this honor to present at this workshop and for participating in the project. It's a great experience from a personal perspective. It's a great experience to interface with a variety of like-minded researchers from all over the world. So I cannot be more grateful than I am. Now, as Deborah has very kindly said, my talk is going to be about multimodal location-aware emergency evacuation assistant. And that is actually based on a project which I concluded a few years ago with a former a PhD student of mine who is now a professor in Turkey. So again, it's a case of collaboration with an emerging, economy, and he was especially interested in the location-aware part of things, and I came on board with Marty Mogarity. But I will ask you to wait for a few minutes before the actual talk. Whenever I give a talk to an international audience, I do like to say a few words about my university for those of you who might not be aware of it. And I apologize for those of you who have, in the past assisted at some of my talks, okay, because you might find this information, repetitive. In any case, in a not so distant past, where people didn't have to socially distance themselves, we are a very nice campus university in Greater London. And I think that is to point two things. First of all, is the fact that most universities, the overwhelming majority of universities in London, are not campus universities. They don't have campuses as such. They have individual buildings scattered throughout the city, and that is because, of course, real estate in London is at a premium, and to have a campus university, it's almost impossible to have it in London. Now, if you notice carefully, I do say Greater London because we are not situated in the center of London, where to have a campus university would be, almost impossible for, funds available to academic institutions. We are situated in Greater London, still within London itself. We are situated very close to Heathrow Airport, which is, again, before the pandemic, it was the #1 airport in Europe. I've just recently read it's been overtaken by Paris. But anyway, it's one of the premier airports of the world, and it's one, in which if you do end up going into London, it's one of the 5 London airports, but it's the main airport and it's the main transcontinental airport for London. In terms of size, we are roughly 15,000 students, and out of which a third are postgraduate students, be they postgraduate talk, PGT, or postgraduate research, which means master's or PhD students. Okay, so roughly 1,000 PhD students and roughly 3,000 MSc students. And again, we are quite multinational in our intake. We have students and staff from over 120 countries of the world in our campus. Now, another thing, apart from it being a campus-based university, another thing which distinguishes Brunel is that if you look at the name, and if you know other universities in England, and indeed in the UK, most of them bear the name of their locality, of the place where they are situated. So have, University of Oxford, University of Reading, University of Birmingham, University of Kent, here presented, and so on. We are one of the few universities in the UK named after an actual person, and that person was Isambard Kingdom Brunel. As you saw over there, he lived in the first half of the 19th century. His name, Brunel, is not, as you might know, English in any case. It is Italian-French name, okay, because the French is, of course, Brunel, the Italian is Brunello. And essentially, his parents came to England, being refugees from the French Revolution. In any case, Isambard Kingdom Brunel, he's a well-known engineer, and he was the one who sparked the Industrial Revolution in England and further afield. So he was a visionary. And we are named after him, and I think it's safe to say we are the only UK university named after an engineer. And again, it shows that we have, applied research is our forte. Engineering and applied research are our forte. We are a new university. We were only established in 1966. So, of course, there are many surveys and many statistics are brandished all over the world. And of course, each university tries to portray itself in as favorable light as possible. So as you can see there, for a new university, according to some survey somewhere, we're not looking too bad. However, university aside, computer science, my particular department, we do publish, quite interesting things as a department, and I do not necessarily put myself in that category because I have many, colleagues who are infinitely more intelligent than I am and publish, infinitely more better cited papers. But in any case, we have consistently, as a department, been ranked, in the top 5 in the UK in terms of citation quantity and quality, and I actually do believe that now we are number 1. Okay, so since that statistic was published in the latest statistic, it's an annual survey run by a national Taiwan university. In terms of in computer science, we are currently number 1. So we do like to boast a bit about our prowess. But coming back, okay, and over there you do see a statue of Eisenbach Kingdom Brunel, which is on our campus. I do want to start talking about the main subject of my talk, which is, of course, this emergency evacuation assistant using multimodal queues. And I'd like to start first by some simple demographics. I mean, it's no secret that in most industrialized nations of the world, the birth rate is going down and longevity is going up. Although again, it's again maybe slightly ironic that we are talking about longevity in the context of a pandemic, which has of course affected how many people and of course reduced the average lifespan of in many countries, if not in all countries of the world. But be that as it may, the trends are there. I think Brazil is a happy exception to this rule in the sense that the proportion of young people in Brazil is actually in majority. But this is not the case with many European countries. Here, of course, what happens is that there is an ever-increasing proportion of the population, which, as you get older, the proportion of elderly people in the population increases, right? So, it's same, in North America as well, where, these numbers are really going, in the next few years, they're really going to show a significant increase in both numbers and proportion of the overall population. So with old age, of course, comes some stark choices, okay? I'm always reminded that I have to be very careful how I behave to my now young daughter, because when I'm going to be old, she's going to be the one who is going to choose my retirement home for me. So, of course, this shows, two aspects of the coin. One is that as one grows older, there is this, stark choice having to be made between, the person living in a cared for environment in a retirement home, or the person, living an independent life. And all measures, by all measures, people living an independent life, their quality of life is higher, their self-esteem is higher. So they seem to live happier lives whilst living independently. And this is also coupled with the fact that it's not only about independent living, because you can live independently, as a couple or within the context of an enlarged family. But again, in the UK and in many other European countries, we have people who are living alone. Okay, so it's not about just living independent, being able to live independently, but being able to live independently alone, and that I think is quite quite a sobering thought. Enter Turkey, and the problem with Turkey is, on top of all of these things, is that Turkey lies on the Anatolian fault plate. And what happens in Turkey is that they usually have at least one strong earthquake per year. And, this is literally a photo taken in the aftermath of a Turkish earthquake. And you can see that it's not much fun, living through and surviving such an experience. So what we wanted to do is to show, okay, how can we use context awareness, and the fact that almost every person now has a extremely smart and underutilized piece of equipment called a smartphone in their pockets. So how can we use context awareness to actually help people out in the case of an emergency? In this case was to guide people out following an earthquake. Of course, if you look at all of these, all of the remarkable work that has been going on recently in the area, one sort of realizes that context awareness in healthcare is probably quite an understudied area, and I would say unjustifiably so, because it could produce many more solutions than it does raise problems. In our particular case, of course, when you are responding after an emergency, time is of the essence. So you have a very narrow window of time in which one can act. If you want to use the smartphone, for instance, as a location indicator of a particular person, okay, again, you have to do that within, again, a very a narrow window of time, especially after an earthquake has struck, because you do want to guide people, the emergency responders. You want to guide them quickly, and reliably to a person's location to save that person, because if that person is stuck underneath rubble and so on, okay, it's not much fun. On top of this, we chose the relatively difficult area of elderly people. Okay, this is just in recognition of the fact that we are all CAPES, temporarily able-bodied. That sooner or later our sensorial functions decline, our cognitive functions decline, and so on. Okay, so each individual, each elderly person has his or her own particular cognitive and sensory situation, and we had to really take that into account when planning our little solution. Now, we were by no means the first on the scene in terms of context-aware or augmented reality-based apps for emergencies, or indeed for guiding purposes. So here on the left you have an augmented reality app called Rescue Me, which essentially was one which guided people outside of a distressed building. But again, it was just the modalities employed in this particular situation were relatively limited. On the right you have Caviar, which wasn't as such an evacuation app. It was more an augmented reality based guide for a university location. Okay, so as you saw over here, based on on the camera, there's a a semi-augmented reality app. You have superimposed a layer of extra information, telling you which are the rooms, if there is a fire exit, and so on and so forth. So there is quite a bit of work done in the area, and perhaps Deborah might have been surprised that my talk is not about Mars media, which, as some of you might know, it's multiple sensory media, and that has been defined as that being two or more media. And in this particular case, we don't have three or more media occurring. We have a situation of multiple modalities, but alternative modalities occurring, not all at once, I must say. So not too sure what games you play in Brazil, but in our neck of the woods, as children, we used to play a game where we used to hide an object inside the room, and then we would guide the person finding the object, and we tell that person, it's cold, you're far away from the object, or you're getting warmer, you're getting warmer, hot, and so on and so forth. And so it's a very sort of a very nice game of hide and seek with objects, in which we are guiding the person towards the location of the hidden objects by giving them thermal clues. And indeed, this was what, when we first started thinking about the project, this was what we had in mind. We had in mind, wouldn't it be great if we could use the smartphone and to have heat, temperature as an indicator of the user, having to evacuate a building in the case of an emergency, and basically the smartphone to actually start warming up as you were to tell the user as a cue that he or she was on the right track of actually evacuating the building safely. So this was the main idea that we had, and we said, well, wouldn't it be a great idea if we did it? And of course, the issue is that if you take your average mobile phone, and I'm not even talking a high-spec mobile phone nowadays, there are a wealth of sensors inbuilt in that mobile phone, and most of them we do not use. Your average person uses the mobile phone to browse the internet and to check emails and to make phone calls. Obviously, not so much. The sensors are there, but they are woefully underutilized. So you have this extremely powerful, equipment in your pocket, which is underutilized, and that to my mind is a tragedy. So as I said, it was my Turkish partner who is into calculating the location, the distance, and the position of an individual indoors. Of course, when you are outdoors, it's easily done using GPS technology. When you are indoors, of course, GPS doesn't go there, and therefore you start having to depend on two devices to locate the distance. Okay, so one device usually has a well-known position, and then you've got a mobile device, and you calculate the distance relative to the well-known position. But then again, you have to have all sorts of beacons and so on indoors to start also calculating, things like location. So how do you calculate the distance? All right, there's a variety of ways you can do it. Time of arrival, angle of arrival, the received signal strength indicator, of course, which takes into account the attenuation of the signal. The further away you are from where a signal is emitted, the lower the amplitude of the signal. And so on. So all of these are perfectly valid ways of calculating the distance. And in order to calculate the position, of course, there are two main ways. One is the fingerprinting, the other one is based on triangulation. So what did we do? Essentially, we had two environments. One was a smart home type of environment. The other one was a university-based environment, which were quite richly saturated with the location beacons, all right? And essentially, we monitored the RSSA values throughout. And based on the collected RSSI values, which were obviously collected, like average, we basically had an idea where a person would be walking through in their average in their average day, so to speak. This is actually and here you have a snapshot of us correcting RSSI data in order to calculate on the right you have three different persons, and three different typical usage scenarios, and it's of course quite important that one knows what are the typical paths that a user follows within a smart home scenario, because if a disaster strikes, such as an earthquake, what you do want to do is you want to be guiding that person along her or his most used path. Okay, you don't want to, a scenario, an earthquake is already a scary enough scenario as it is. You don't want to be guiding that elderly person who is in shock. You don't want to be guiding them on an unfamiliar path out of the distressed building. You want that path to be, in as much as possible, well known to that person. Okay, it helps the whole situation. So yeah, sorry, I jumped a bit over the. I'm a bit lagging behind with my slides. So of course, you do need to have all of this usage information, okay, which we collected beforehand, and then based on this usage information, we came up with possible evacuation paths which were best used for different types of users. So for each user, I think we had three possible evacuation paths linked to their usage profiles, and depending on which one of those paths was available in the case of a distressed building, we've used one or the other. So this is a smart home scenario. Of course, here you can see that there are three rooms inside this the home, and you can see in brown the location of the location beacons. And essentially this was how we, and the user currently is in the living room, and we have the little smartphone with the waves all around it. Okay, so this is the actual physical dimensions of our test bed. In order then to actually dynamically compute the location of a user, we used the nearest neighbor in Sitter space, which used the available beacons, and we used RSSI and triangulation as well as fingerprinting to determine the location, and of course in order to determine the direction the user was going, we used magnetometer data from the actual smartphone. Now, where is the multimodality in all of this? Well, the multimodality is we had various different choices. It wasn't just heat. Okay, so essentially it was vibration. Okay, so essentially if the vibrations were very frequently occurring, that would indicate that they had to turn right. If they were occurring at larger intervals, say turn left. Again, light as well. Of course, you have light, and we tuned the brightness of the light to actually increase as you are going closer to the exit. And again, sound, just like you have, parking sensors, at when you park your car. Again, you have sound, the frequency of the sound signal, indicating proximity information of a particular exit. So yes, here, as I said, we hard coded possible evacuation scenarios that a person might use, and depending on the particular type of scenario which was still feasible if a disaster happened to take place, we then tailored it one way or the other with appropriate recommendations for the user. These are actual measurements which were taken. As you see on the right, on the last column, there were two locations. One was university location. The other one was the smart home. I won't dwell too much on the results, except to say that the fingerprinting algorithm does seem to give better results than the trilateration algorithm, irrespective of the environment. One thing which we would never have imagined, or should have imagined in hindsight, was the fact that the furniture in the environments do impact upon the location-aware capabilities of our activity location. Why? Because if the furniture is absorbent, such as sofas and so on, then of course the signal strength goes down. Whereas if a furniture is reflective, such as a blackboard and so on and so forth, then that is much better for signal strength. Although the reflection, of course, introduces other artifacts. And of course, the big elephant in the room is and will always be energy. How can one do all of these multimodal little artifacts and not consume a lot of energy? And of course, also how can the beacons themselves, because the beacons are pre-programmed to actually conserve energy and to switch off quite often, so we had to tinker around with the beacons in order to maintain them at always emitting their beacons. So again, it's something that we still have to look at, but on the other hand, you don't want energy to last the whole day. You're really thinking of energy lasting in a very narrow time window of, let's say, 15 minutes. And we thought at the time that it was reasonable to assume that on average you would have enough battery power for the next 15 minutes, critical for them to actually, for the user to actually be guided out of the environment. So I do realize that I'm slightly over the time limit, and I do apologize for this, but I'm very sorry, but I'm also very happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, George, for your very nice presentation. We're going to open for questions. I think we have one from Rafael Abreu. Rafael, if you'd like to open your camera and mic, please be our guest.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Rafael.
So thank you, Professor George, for your presentation. I enjoyed very much. In fact, in Brazil, we play hot and cold games. And I was thinking about the part of multimodality, of using sensory effects to convey information. And I was thinking, I had an hypothesis that maybe sensory effects can convey better information, more urgent information than visual or textual. And I was wondering if this was also a motivation for our work, and if you can have any input on that.
I mean, I totally agree with you. I think, as I said, I think our main motivation was that proximity information can be conveyed much more efficiently and importantly by using a variety of sensory modalities other than those which are already being used, Rafael. So yeah, I mean, we are singing from the same book. I can't really say anything except that that is the whole motivation of this project. And of course, the other motivation of the project is that you are able to give these alternative modalities using other senses with a relatively standard smartphone nowadays. However, we have all of these abilities, but I'm going to repeat, probably I am preaching to the converted, we are underutilizing the abilities of the smartphones. Okay, we are using, it's the famous 1090 rule in the sense that we are using 90% of the time, we are using 10% of the computational abilities of our smartphones.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rafael.
Thank you, Rafael and Professor George. We have a question from Professor Célio in the chat. Célio, would you like to open your mic and camera and ask it to George directly? Or would you like me to do the question for you?
Hello, George. Good to see
Hello,
you.
Célio.
Let's talk. Well, indoor positional systems, they are very hard to be accurate, right? So my question is regarding a disaster situation where furniture will move and other obstacles will show up in the way, in the path. So can you comment on other possible discovery mechanisms to guide people in this kind of situation?
It's not as such, it's not on other alternatives, okay? Of course, you know, as you said, indoor positioning is a hard task most of the time. It becomes an even harder task in a distressed building, okay? Because the environment changes, right? You know, there can be collapsed furniture and so on and so forth. We do not, of course, if a disaster strikes, we don't know what furniture has collapsed and if there is rubble and so on. So to some extent, we you know, it's not as if we are leaving the user completely blind. We do rely on the user to be aware of their surroundings and to make decisions like saying, oh, this you know, is guiding me along this path, but look, you know, there is a collapsed floor and there is no way I can cross the collapsed floor. So therefore I have to go along another route. So it's not, and I guess why we hard coded different solutions, okay? Because you know, sometimes plan A doesn't work, sometimes plan B doesn't work. Hopefully plan C works, okay? The issue is that the situation is such that any help is better than no help, okay? All right. So yeah, it's not going to help everybody all of the time. It's not, but it will help some people some of the time.
Perfect. Thank you. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Célio and George. We have a question from our audience at YouTube. It is done by Petruccio, who is doing postdoc with us, in fact. So he says, good morning, Professor Guinea. I'd like to know if you have tried to use VSLAM for localization. VSLAM, it's VSLAM.
The short answer is no. Now, I'm not an expert. I know the basics of localization. I'm not an expert. I'm more on the multimodal, multi-sensory side of things, okay? But happy to have a conversation about that. Absolutely. And thank you very much for the suggestion.
Thank you, George. Thank you very much for your presentation and answers. Do we have any more questions from the audience here at the Zoom meeting? Okay, so we'd like to thank you again, George, for your very nice presentation and availability and all the collaboration and effort and time that you have been spending with our group. It's really a pleasure to work. It has been a pleasure to work with you and your group at Brunel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deborah, and thank you all. The feelings are mutual.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to our next presentation. It's going to be given by Douglas Paulo de Matos. Douglas Matas he holds a bachelor's and master's degree in computer science from Universidade Federal Fluminense. He's currently a PhD student at the MediaCom Lab at UFI in the area of multimedia and multimedia systems. He has done a PhD sandwich period at Brunel University, London in 2019 with Professor George Guinea, and he has also worked as a researcher on the Erasmus project at the Polytechnic University of Bucharest in 2017. So Douglas is going to talk about an approach for authoring multimedia applications based on events. Douglas.
So hello everyone, I'm going to share my screen.
We can see it, Douglas.
Okay. So hello everyone again. As Deborah said, I'm Douglas. I'm a PhD student at UF, and I work with Professor George Guinea in 2019 at Brunel University, London. And my work called An Approach for Authoring Multimedia Application Based on Events. So, George already said here, we have traditional multimedia applications that basically we have audio-visual content. That's it, video and audio and images and text and so on. And with that content, we just explore it to human senses. So, but however, we know that the majority of human communication is no verbal. So we can use other type of media. We can say that this new type that I'm going to talking about, it's also a media, but a new type of media that we can explore other human senses. So in that context, a new concept has arisen in the multimedia community. We call multimedia, that means multiple sensory media, and at least we have more two type of media that can explore other human senses in that context. So for example, we can have a sensor effect that we also can, you can also define that it's a new kind of medium, but that explore other human sense beyond, beyond sight and hearing. So for example, we can have wind and fog and cold to exploring the tactile sensitivity, for example. And in this way, we can create a new type of environment, that we can create a new type of immersion, that we can create using those type of sensory effects together with the traditional multimedia content. And of course, we can increase the quality of experience of a traditional multimedia application in which we have only video and audio, and so we can add new type of sensory effects to explore other human senses. And as a result, we can increase the quality of experience of those users. So in that context, we have several applications that we can use those type of multimedia applications. We can say multimedia applications. For example, we can apply in the entertainment, for example, for the cinema and digital games, in which we can add the sensory effects to create an immersive virtual environment. We can also apply to simulators, for example, in training for flighting and driving. Also, we can apply to learning, and of course, we can apply in the healthcare area. For example, we already have proposed in an article in a previous article, immersive environment for children with autism, in which we can have a multimedia content, but in that room we can have another type of actuator device that can render a new type of sensory effect, for example, wind and temperature, and we can check the response of those users to the multimedia content, and we can make experiment with cognitive activity for that users and analyze them through an immersive environment. So in that context, we have several scientific efforts that focus in different areas of multimedia documents or applications. And our focus here is in the authoring or production phase. And this phase, we have some challenge. And that those challenges, our motivation here to propose a solution for that, and have a challenge of modeling multimedia applications. So in this area also, we have a demand for authoring environment, graphical environment to enhance the development of those type of applications, and effectiveness in temporal synchronization. That's a fundamental and essential point that we have concern when we added the new type of media in a traditional multimedia applications. So our goal here is enhance the development of multimedia application and also support the development of graphical authoring environment. And for that goal, we propose a multimedia conceptual model based on events, an XML-based language based on that model for 360 multimedia applications, graphical environment for authoring multimedia applications called Steve 2.0, and also an integration of Steve with a VR, a virtual reality, multimedia authoring tool by using this language. So regarding to multi-scene model, basically the model defines multiple sensory effects, of course, and give some entity to synchronize effects and traditional media together. So we have audio and video and text and so on synchronized with a sensory effect, for example, how to affect or code effect, for example. And here we can have a synchronization among traditional media and also with sensory effect. But in some for example, in some applications, we can have only sensory effects. It doesn't mean that we have to do some traditional multimedia content to that we can call that type of application as a multimedia application. And basically, to synchronize those effects, the multi-scene model has some entities, special entities to specify those temporal relation that we call here a causal temporal relation, where we can have a condition that trigger an action. So when something happens, do something. So for example, when a video starts, we can start a sensory effect, for instance. And that model represents sensory effect as first-class entities in document node. So in the multimedia community, we have a lot of multimedia models. But here, when we represent sensory effect as first-class entities in a multimedia model, we can represent those sensory effects as a generic node, for example, like a video, and using those entities to synchronize the sensory effect together with the traditional multimedia content. So here we have Steve, the graphical environment, and here we have a traditional media repository in which we can import video and audio, the traditional media, to create our application. And here we have an area dedicated to edit media property, for example, position and size of a media, for example. And for sensory effects, we can define the intensity, for example, for hot temperature or cold effect. And here we have a preview. It's like a play in which we can you can play and stop the multimedia content. And here we have the different type of sensory effect that Steve offers to the users. And here we can have the temporal causal relations. And I'm going to talk about a little more about it and show a video to demonstrate how we can use those type of relations to synchronize our applications. So regarding those causal temporal relations, those relations are based on event-based paradigm. So we working with event to trigger an action and to synchronize the whole applications. And those conditional temporal relations are based on Allen relations. And here's an example of a relation, a simple relation that we call start relation, in which we have a primary node. And when this primary node starts, we also start a secondary node together, or more than one, two, three, and so on, nodes together with the beginning of the primary node. Here, just a video, a demo to demonstrate how we can synchronize, for example, a video together and an image and a scent effect. And we just click on the type of the relation that we wanted. And to synchronize those nodes, including sensory effects, for example. And as a final point here that I said in the beginning regarding the contribution of our proposal is the integration of Steve with a VR environment. So we have defined XML-based language to define a multimedia application and also a 360 multimedia application. 360 multimedia application that we have a 360 video. So in this language that it's based on multi-SAM model, we can define, for example, this file, this multi-cell, that the name of the language that we propose here, through using Stevie, for example, or using a textual way to define this file using an XML editor. And after that, we can export this file to the VR environment. This VR environment is another project, another study in our multimedia grouping at UF. And we can integrate this with the VR environment and to play the multimedia application in a VR environment, for example. So thank you, everyone. If anyone have some questions, I'm pleased to respond.
Thank you, Douglas, for your presentation. Is there any question here from the audience? Yes, Professor Pablo Cesar, please.
Hello, very, very interesting work indeed. So how is this language related to the more traditional synchronization languages like SMILE or NCL or similar?
Yeah, it's similar to NCL and SMILE as well, but it's a simple language that is based on the multi-SAM model, in which we use the relation, the temporal relations that Steve, the graphical environments, offer. So basically, we have media elements and sensory effect elements in which we can define, of course, the source of the content for multimedia traditional media, and sensory effect, we can define the type of sensory effect and the presentation property, for example, the intensity. If we have a light effect, we can define not only the intensity value, but we can define, for example, the color of the light And for a video, we can define the position, the size, for example. And to synchronize those media and sensory effect, we use the temporal relation that I presented here using Steve, for example. So we have a temporal relation element in that language in which we can define the primary node and the secondary node, and to define and to specify the temporal synchronization of the document.
How do you combine that with the more VR environments? Because you mentioned something about VR as well.
Yeah, we have another student that working in that VR environment. So that student is based on our model and language to define the elements in that VR environment. So from the XML language document file, the XML file, that VR environment make a parse, read this XML file, and interpret those elements and render those elements in the VR environment. And that is the integration.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much for interesting work in it.
No problem, it's a pleasure. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Pablo, for your question, and Douglas. Is there any more question? Okay, Douglas, could you comment very briefly how do you intend to integrate sensory effects in the VR environment with the 360 view, and how sensory effect intensities are going to be defined?
Yeah. So in that language, we define the sensory effect using a sensory effect element. And this element, we can define a property according to the type of sensory effect. For instance, if we have a light effect, we can define the intensity of that light, and we can also define a color, for example, of that light. And those properties are based on a standard called MPGAV standard, and that standard define essential properties for rendering sensory effects according to their types. And the VR environment, we use a graphical representation to show the user which sensory effect is activated at that moment. So when we render in that VR environment, we have the multimedia traditional content together with symbols, graphical representation that represent each type of sensory effect. So if you have a temperature effect, we have a symbol icon represent this temperature effect, and when this sensory effect is activated, this icon gets another color, and using a color to emphasize that this sensory effect is activated in that time of the presentation of the multimedia application, for example.
Okay, Douglas, thank you very, very much for your presentation. So thank you for the questions. We're going to have our next presentation, which is going to be given by Professor Pablo Cesar from CWI in Amsterdam. So it's really a pleasure to have you here, Pablo. Professor Pablo leads the Distributed and Interactive Systems Group at CWI, the National Research Institute for Mathematics and Computer Science in the Netherlands. He is a professor at TU Delft in the Multimedia Computing Group. He has received the prestigious 2020 Netherlands Prize for ICT Research for his work on humor-centered multimedia systems. His research combines human-computer interaction and multimedia systems and focuses on modeling and controlling complex collections of media objects, including real-time media and sensor data that are distributed in time and space. So thank you very much, Pablo, and he's going to talk about people, sensors, understanding. Be very,
very much for the introduction. Let me try to share the screen first. So now you should be able to see it. And there. So now you should be seeing the full screen and everything, and I hope you as well listen to it fine. Great.
Yes, it's fine.
Thank you very much for the introduction. It's a pleasure, and of course, I'm new to all this network, so it's really interesting to listen what is happening and trying to see points of interest and actually trying to get some collaborations ongoing. So I'm going to talk about basically work on sensors that we've been doing here at the Institute for quite some time now. We work in the past a lot with multimedia systems and in particular with multimedia languages, but this is really more about the usage of sensors in various different situations to understand human experience. So here you can see a bunch of photos that you will be seeing little by little what actually is about. If you have questions or you want to interrupt me, just do it. I cannot see the chat, so that I wouldn't see. But just put your camera and tell me whatever you want to say. I have some videos as well, so I hope they play well. And as in the introduction, so Pablo, I work at the National Institute for Research, the National Research Institute for Mathematics and Computer Science, that's CWI. CWI, it's a small size type of institute in which we do fundamental research on computer science and mathematics. And actually, we've been doing quite a number of good things in the past, and I want to just mention a couple of those, since this is the institute that actually pays my life and rent. So, for example, the first register NL domain, it was set up in here back in the 80s. More important and relevant is that the first connection between Europe and the internet actually happened here in 88. And then we've been discussing and trying to research more on a number of topics, from the first computer in Holland, the dikes in the Netherlands and the size, because that's of course essential to not get completely underwater. And more recently, languages like Python that you all probably know and you probably have used. So it was started here at CWI, and Smile, that is one of the multimedia languages that are more traditional in terms of how you distribute and how you actually put timing into and synchronization into the languages. So this is the institute. This is where I work. I'm as well full professor at TU Delft in the multimedia computing group. And this is the type of topics that we are actually studying in my group. I'm trying to move a bit. Wait, give me a second here. Yes. So these are the type of topics that we are investigating in my group. We are a mix between human-computer interaction and between multimedia systems. So we typically participate both in SIG-Chi type of conferences and in ACM Multimedia or SIG-MM type of conferences. The team is quite multidisciplinary, is quite diverse as well. And we have researchers from all backgrounds in reality. So from computer science, electrical engineering, we have psychologists as well. We have industrial designers. And the whole idea is that we try to create new systems that we can put outside in the wild, and then we try to understand the reaction of people towards those systems. The topics that we study, they are a bit diverse, but right now we are focusing more on immersive media, on virtual reality. We are working a lot on social virtual reality, that is connecting people like we are doing right now. via video conferencing, but in 3D. So creating spaces in which in 3D you can connect with other people. We have another big line of research that is on affective computing. That's what I'm going to be talking today. So that's more about understanding users, understanding emotions, understanding reactions to various different stimuli. And we've been working in the networking side for quite some time. Maybe now it's a bit less than before, but we've been working on social IoT or on ways in which you can optimize networks in order to provide the best possible experience. For this particular talk, I'm going just to focus on one aspect, that is how to quantify the user experience temporally. That's going to be more or less the topic of the whole discussion. It's going to be a bit high level, just to give you an overview from the path that we have followed here at my group. And it's going to be a bit detailing the use cases, the learners that we got, and how we went from one step to the next. So I will say that the beginning, it was quite simple questions, and it was quite large scale. But still, the concept was the same, is how can we temporarily quantify the user experience of users? And we explore all kinds of use cases, from watching movies to theater plays, to go into the discourse. I'm going to talk a bit about all those. Lately, we've been working more on more complex questions, probably coming back a bit to the lab and trying to understand a bit deeper the problems and trying to get more sensor data, more insights into what the readings are, what actually the sensors are providing. And now we are in a moment in which we are very interested, and I think this workshop is quite interesting for that. And we are interested to explore new ways of collaborating, new ways of doing things in which we can combine both the larger scale and the complex questions, which of course is the most complex thing to do. So here is the basics of what we are trying to do. And of course, if you were in front of me, I will ask you about how many of you have one of these sensors. And the answer will be not that many. But the thing is that there are proliferation of all type of sensors that actually what they are doing is that they are trying to get all kind of signals from us. These are being used for a variety of things, from personal trainers to disease prevention, to monitoring stress in various circumstances. So there are a number of all these devices. And the whole idea of what we try to research in the group is this temporality. So we are looking into particular events. These events, they have a temporal dimension, and this can be a theater play, it can be a movie, it can be a presentation like this one. And then what we want to do is to understand what is the reaction of the people basically during that event. In order to do so, what we do is that we have a number of sensors, and that's the ones that we are providing to, for example, the audience. It will be very interesting now to know actually the reactions of all the people that is looking at this presentation, and trying to better understand what are those reactions in the temporality. This is a very old project. This is not from my group. This is from a different group. Basically, what they were doing was a pillow, and the pillow had a number of sensors. And then what it was used for, it was for watching television. So if there was a kid that it was watching television, then based on the sensor information, it could gather a lot of information about the reactions of that kid while watching a television show. And then what it could happen is that the television show will change depending if the kid was getting too scared or too nervous or maybe too happy. So it will just be adaptive to the exact reactions of the people in front of that particular media. So we've been doing that, and this is one of the core areas that we were exploring in the past. Research in the wild, in which what we were doing, we're providing a number of sensors to the audience. So what you can see here in the bottom is one person with some smart styles. So we've been working a lot with the smart styles in order to better understand the reactions of users to various different stimuli. And in the upper side, what you see is my team trying to put sensors in people just before a theater play happened here in the Netherlands. So we were going to theater plays, we were trying to better understand what it was the reactions of people to that theater play. And as I said, the most important bit was in the temporal domain. So then what we could do, it was that we could map it. And what we could do is we could create an emotional layer on top of the basically normal metadata and everything that all these events they have, theater plays, movies, operas. So let me start for the first part, that it was really simple questions, but in the wall. So the idea here is that we were working with distributed theater. So this is before COVID times, but we were studying how you could basically divide the theater's stage into two parts, for example, with actors in different parts, between actors in different parts and audiences in another part. And then one of the biggest problems that we had is that if you don't have the audience in front of you, then it's very difficult to understand the reactions of that audience, because of course you have no cues whatsoever. And in this case, what we were trying to do was to understand the reactions of the audience of theater based on a number of physiological sensors. So here what we did is the Tempest. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Tempest, but this is a theater play by Shakespeare in which what you have is two different stages. So that's what we did. Which in one, you have Prospero in the lyre. He's a super powerful semi-god that basically makes the life miserable of everyone who goes to that island. Then you have another stage that actually is where all the rest of the people go. And then we had, there's a Caliban that is just a mythical creature that goes around and wars for the semi-god. So what we did here is that it was a distributed theater play in which we had people in different locations. We had actors in two different locations, and then we have the audience as well divided in there. You can see here, these were very, very close by places, but still they were separated by a network, which means that it's always a very long distance. This is a little bit of how did it look, in which you had the different stages, you had home viewers, and then the problem, it was really how we understand from the users. So let me try to put this video. Let's hope that it works so you get an idea of what actually we were doing in there. Let's see.
One of the aims of the European Framework 7 vConnect program is to use the rollout of superfast broadband in Cornwall to facilitate an audience not only to see a live theatre performance remotely, but also to provide a way to give feedback to the performers. So if there is a live theatre performance in a main theatre in Truro, people in a village hall in a remote rural area will be able to see the performance, and the performers will get some idea how their performance is received remotely. Galvanic skin response, GSR, has been used to measure audience engagement. In a collaboration between Falmouth University and the Centre for Computer Science, CWI, in Amsterdam, we conducted an experiment in which during a live theatre performance, GSR of 15 audience members was registered simultaneously and wirelessly onto one laptop. Here we see what happens when a balloon pops unexpectedly. The bang of the balloon popping literally sends a shockwave through the audience. The GSR sensors register a peak, which is sent to the laptop. The GSR readings of 10 audience members correlate closely, showing an initial rise as the audience is closely drawn into the performance, roughly followed by flattening towards the end. We were also able to cluster the GSR across the audience minute by minute.
So this is basically the whole idea, in which what we were doing is that we were given to audiences one of the sensors that we actually constructed. Here is how we constructed all the devices. And what we were doing is that those sensors, they basically is galvanic skin response. So basically they tell about the sweat. And with that, we have a good proxy about the level of engagement. And the difficulty was one to handle 100 or 200 of those at the same time. To make sure that the packets that were not lost and to actually to analyze the data. The good thing is that since there was only one stimuli, then we could always figure out what was the reaction to that particular stimuli, because you have a lot of people reacting at the same time in one particular way. And people that they were reacting about something else in their own heads, then they didn't really show in our data. So as I said, what we did is that we started by creating our own sensors. This is not the final sensor, this is just an initial version of it. Why we did this is because of two main reasons. The first one is that we wanted to really learn how it works and how it was made of and what type of data really gave. Typically sensors are so close that it's very, very complex to actually analyze what data they are really giving to you. And the second one is because normally all these sensors, what they do, is that they have some Bluetooth type connection. So you cannot really use them if you want to have hundreds and hundreds of people at the same time receiving. So this is basically the path. So as researchers, we actually went to China, we organized things, we built our own sensors, and basically they look like this, then people could wear them. There were other issues like, for example, the infrastructure. So as I said, we developed intelligent mechanisms for the packets in order that we didn't lose packets. So basically we could have all kind of, all the data from everyone in the audience. And then we developed a number of mechanisms just to understand those signals. So let me give you just a couple of examples of how things look like, so you can get an idea of what was the result. So this was a very popular theater play that is called Warhorse. This was in the National Theater of China. So in there we had 100 to 200 people that they were wired up with the sensors. And then the good thing is that we will have all these data and all these results. So then we could go back to the people that actually, all the people doing the performance and the producers and the actors, and we could put, as I said, this layer of emotion on top of the actual normal temporal layer of the theater play. So then we could really inform much better what it was the reaction of the audience to the different parts of the performance. Here there are some more examples. Here are some of the other ideas that we had. This was, for example, done for, I don't know if you know a program called The Voice, in which there is people and they are in the stage, they are singing. And then what we could do as well, it was based on these physiological signals to provide a layer. So then we can decide actually who goes home based on who is less interesting. And we basically use this in a various different scenarios. So this is during a dance performance here in the Netherlands. I saw this before. And as I said, what is very complex in here was that we are not intervening the media. So this is a normal dance performance that happens in the National Dance Theater here in the Netherlands. But what we are doing is that we are trying to gather the data from the people attending there. And then what we have to do is there is a lot of work on really getting real data in the wild, which is basically full of noise. When you get data in the wild, it's basically noise. And trying to handle all of that in real time and trying to really make it an understanding what's happening. We did others. This was, for example, a music concert. This was with the Goethe Institute here in the Netherlands as well. And this is the interesting bits of doing research is that, of course, we didn't really notice how alcohol will affect all your physiological signals. So it was not the most successful experiment. And this was yet another one that we did for a presentation like the one I'm giving right now, in which basically what we will do is that we will gather all this data from the people in the audience. And based on that, we will create an installation that is basically, these were some balloons. And then the balloons, they will be going up or down depending on the atmosphere in a given moment from the audience. So if the people, they were very engaged, then the balloons will go very high. And if they were very not engaged, they will go very, very low. So these are a number of visualizations that we did in order to basically show what we were doing. And then what will happen is that we'll have an installation. The installation will show the atmosphere of the event, and then we'll have some screens as well to help people understanding what was happening. So there are a number of images of how that looked like. I have a bunch of videos in there, but I think I'm going to skip them because I want to tell you just briefly about the other project, and I think it will give you a much better overview of the things that my team has been doing in the last years. So this second one is a more in the wild, large scale sensing. So the first one was in the wild in the sense that we instrumented an environment and we gave some sensors so people could actually, or we could get information from the reactions to particular events. Here it was even a bit more in the wild because this was a party. So, we were approached, there's an event called the Amsterdam Dance Event. This is the biggest dance event in Europe. There are big parties from all kinds of companies. And we were approached to organize the party of the future. So they were asking us what actually, how we could do it. And in here, what they wanted to do, it was to create an infrastructure in which the building itself could sense the people going to the dance and to the dance floor and to the disco. So this was the idea. It was about sensing the crowd. So basically, as you see in there, it was the Red Bull party. That was one of the most important parties that they were doing that time. And here what we wanted to do was to actually understand the reaction of the people and to somehow allow the building to react to whatever was happening in there. So what we did, it was to create a number of sensors. Once again, the group works a lot on the smart styles, it works on sensors, it tries to really understand the low level, apart from the networking part. So basically we started, I don't know if you can see this. Oh no, because there's my background, so you cannot see these things. You can see this maybe. So we created this type of wristbands that they were actually resembling the normal process of going to a disco, getting your token when you leave your coat or when you leave something, and then putting in your hand. Then the wristbands, they had a number of sensors. And with those sensors, what we tried to do was to understand basically the level of movement. So if people were standing, if they were walking, if they were dancing, we could sense much more, right? If we were lying on the floor after drinking, we could sense it, but actually that was not relevant for the study that we were doing. And we could as well know where they were in the environment, and we could know about their temperature. So based on all of that, this is just the process. We work with textile manufacturer here that is called Vibore. And based on that information, what we did is they created a huge party. Here we are talking about 450 people per night, in which basically we were providing all the sensors for that party and trying to fully understand what was happening. We had a whole complex system. So this is a whole machinery, artificial intelligence going on in there, in which we will have all these sensors. We will instrument the space. So basically we will have beacons all over the place, and we will have, so actually the beacons were the ones in the wristbands that will have a bunch of sensor tags all over the place and Raspberry Pis. And then based on all of that, we had some mechanisms to control the data flow, and based on that we will try to analyze what was the reaction of the people and what actually was the experience of those people. Very important for us was what I said in the beginning. It was that we wanted the environment to react to the people inhabiting the space in that particular moment. So what we had, for example, was a room that would change lighting, it will change music depending on the dance floor. So if the people were dancing very, very hard, then this will be a very quiet place. And the opposite, we will have as well screens and all kind of environments to just gamify a bit as well the whole experience. So it will tell a bit about what it was happening and where people were. And of course, there were a lot of scientific issues that they were quite complex. So for example, if we want to train any model, the models, they are normally trained on activity. So dancing is not considered as an exercise activity as they were. So we didn't have any data set. Now there is 1 hour, but of course, sensors and all the energy that they take. So we wanted to make sure that all this could work. So then we were really going at the lower frequency that typically is done, and the number of packet loss that we could get. So a couple of examples. So this is, for example, how we train our data. So here you can see non-essential workers trying to learn how to dance.
I think you should really go to the real stuff. Huh? What's that? This is one of the bees.
This is one other way in which we were trying, because as I said, we have 450 people per night, right? So we couldn't even predict how was the packet loss, and so these are ways in which we intuitively try to solve all the given problems, and in the end, things actually work pretty well. Here is some visualization, right? As you can see, this is the whole area of the disco that we created. We created a whole infrastructure that actually had a number of rooms with several stages with great DJs. Here's how people were moving. We had as well visualizations about who were the most popular DJs in terms of the amount of dancing that happened in there and in the way things were working. We had post visualizations. We had all kind of information that they could actually tell us once again temporally what was the experience of the people in these different situations. We created some nice artifacts as well, because of course we thought that one of the big things or important things of going to a disco is all the memories that you have after or that you don't have. So we created a number of nice artifacts that we could share, basically. Once again, having this emotional, or in this case, it was more experiential layer on top of the event. So this was a very temporal version of what actually did happen in the event. I had one part 3 of what we were doing right now, but I think it's getting a bit too late. So let me just go to the last slide. So this is more about current work on how we are trying to understand sleep behavior and how we are trying to understand all the things. So as I said, a lot of our research has been in the wild for a long time, in which we basically put systems outside and then very ethnographically, in fact, try to understand how people react to those systems. So what is the experience of those people, of the people in those environments? And these are going a bit more to maybe complex problems in the sense that we want to learn more complex constructs of human behavior, but as well less in the wild, because of course otherwise it would be impossible to do it. So I'm not going to go through all of this. This is just basically how we try to do it in a different manner, that this type of systems in which basically for sleep monitoring, they put you in a bed and then I don't know if you can even sleep. But let me skip these slides, doesn't matter very much. And let me go to here, in which basically I go back to the basis of what the team is trying to do, in which we are trying to really understand user experience. And we are trying to understand that in real time and in events. And of course, with all of that information, then we can best help people to have a healthier life, but as well, we can as well inform if there is a video provider with more information about the reactions to different parts of movies or theater plays or operas. And as I said, we are very interested in smarter styles, because if I will go back to a previous questions in which how many people have now a smartwatch, probably the answer will be very, very little. But if I will ask how many of us we have a shirt, then it will be a lot of us. So this is the type of work that we've been doing. We'll be really, really interested in trying to collaborate in any of these areas on affective computing, about temporal quantifying experience of users, temporality of experiences, emotional layers on top of the more video layers or audio layers, smarter styles. And this basically concludes the talk. And I'm sorry it took a bit longer than I would have expected. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pablo, for your very interesting and exciting talk about your research. We have some comments here from the audience at YouTube saying that they would like to participate in the research dancing to use the sensors. And they specifically say that if you use Brazilian rhythms, like we call it forró, which is used in the northeast part of Brazil, that people would really get, more excited, and maybe you have more interested data about it. So really very nice to hear.
I shouldn't say publicly that we are having a lot of fun in my team, yes. And I totally agree that I mean, as you could see in the video of my own researchers trying to dance, I mean, that's kind of, I mean, I can imagine for a Brazilian audience that might be quite an insult, actually, that we call or consider that dancing. So you can imagine the pre-models that we have. Maybe we're not the best ones that you can get, but we couldn't do better anyway. So yeah,
I think it would be easy for us to find volunteers to participate in research here in Brazil. Okay, so well, we have questions for Professor Pablo.
Deborah?
Yes,
I
Leticia.
have a question. First of all, Pablo, thank you for the amazing presentation. I love your work. And my question is, did you collect some verbal report, like explicit emotional experience to correlate with this physiological data?
In all these projects that I talk about, we couldn't, and that's the challenge and the beauty of it. So I mean, when we are setting up things in a theater play, we cannot really, I mean, we cannot go to them, I mean, while they are actually watching and getting information. We got questionnaires afterwards. So of course we had questionnaires that we use as the ground truth. But then those questionnaires, it's always based on memory. So the amount of ground truth that they are to reality, it's not that. But that's what we use indeed as the ground truth. We had some questionnaires after, and then in there we ask a number of questions about their own experience, and then we were using that as the ground truth. But we will then. So for example, we wanted to record, for example, things or to take videos. But they wouldn't allow us because, of course, this is a theater in the middle of China, right? That we don't have any control. For the dancing was even worse because this was a real party. I mean, this is a very important event for Red Bull in this case, right? So they didn't allow us to talk to anyone. Actually, they were really cautious that everyone understood that we were not even invited. I mean, we don't have the right. I don't look like someone who Red Bull will invite to their party, right? So they wanted to make sure that people could separate between the researchers and the actual people invited to the party. So we didn't have access to them in that, unfortunately. So, but all of this is the interesting bit of how, if we are to take our systems outside, then how we gather the ground truth, and it's a very, very complex problem that still I wouldn't know how to solve anyway, of course.
Thank you, Leticia. Pablo, I was wondering if, as you have already collected so much data, and is there a data set, an open data set that could be shared for the research community?
Yes, the one on dancing we published it at MMC's a couple of years back. So all that is out there and is open. The other ones, they were done together with a company, and they were not very happy on opening the data set. So unfortunately, we couldn't do that. But it would have been very, very interesting to have all those GSR in there, indeed. But okay. for the dancing, we have it. So we can always do more dancing. It's a nice project anyway. So.
Okay, very well. And well, I have a question. I thought that I understood that you focus it on live performances, like people in theaters and dancing. Have you thought about extending this idea for example, people at home watching TV and maybe watching this digital TV content, and we could use those kind of sensors to understand what the audience is feeling or thinking about the TV programs?
Yeah, so yeah, indeed. Right now we are doing that. We are working mostly with 360 videos. So one of the things that we are doing now is trying to finding ways to annotate continuously videos or 360 videos in order to get the most precise ground truths that we could get. And then at the same time, we are using a lot of sensors to then predict things, because once we have that ground truth. So that's a whole line of research that we are now, I mean, we got a couple of papers published at CAI. So I didn't have time to put it in here because it's just, but yes, but we are doing that indeed. And that's why I asked before as well about the multi-sensory one, right? That if you are already using some type of temporal synchronization model, then there could be very easily a layer on top of that can be probably modeled in a similar manner, which means that there could be renderers that they take into account various modalities and the videos and audios, and of course visualizations of the emotions or reactions of people. So yeah.
All right, so very interesting. We'll talk about it with you later, so we can read that papers, and maybe we could use this idea, because Brazil is starting to think about its future generation digital TV system. So now we have this opening, we have this open call in order to propose new technologies that could be used and integrated into this new system. And I think that, of course, this idea of measuring how the audience feels about the TV programs could be very interesting and useful. All right, thank you, Pablo.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Okay, so Leticia, could you
yes,
the other speakers? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Deborah. It's a pleasure to introduce the next speaker, Professor Aura Conce. Professor Aura is a full professor at the Institute of Computing at Fluminense Federal University. She has a background in civil engineering and received her PhD from PUC-Rio. She has been an CNPq fellow at City University, London, CAPES postdoctoral fellow at University Rei Juan Carlos, Madrid, visiting professor at York University, Canada, and visiting research at Marseille Université and Centrale Marseille by CNRS. And her research considers applications of numerical methods and visual computing, acting mainly on finite elements, computer graphics, image analysis and processing, biomedical images, visual computing, pattern recognitions, serious games, and haptics in virtual reality. Professor Aura, is a pleasure. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
My pleasure, Leticia. And let me try to see if I can share the screen. I hope it's this one. Is it?
Yes, it's working.
Okay, so let's begin. Thank you, Leticia. As you mentioned, I work mainly with applications of computer vision, and especially with image processing and analysis. As I think that the main aspect, the main goal of the PRINT project is interchange or stimulate cooperation, international cooperation, I would not only present one subject, but you present some kind of images that you are working with since the beginning of the project, that was in 2019. And so I will mention about some types of image and collaboration that we have working since then. So of course, all of them is related to image processing and analysis. But as Professor, the last professor mentioned, if you want to interrupt it at any time related to any point that you want to discuss or include, please. I think that I am very happy to stop and clarify, or we can begin the discussion about this point. I decide to, as you have worked with a lot of type of image, I decide to arrange these related to the image that we were working with. The first, the type of imaging that you are more related in this is for me for more than a decade, is from infrared images. and especially related to the examination of two parts of the human body, the breast and the thyroid. And related to this, you are, of course, open to other application of this type of the image, but I will mention something about this aspect, especially because of these two parts of the human body, the breast and thyroid. You have your own data set. That means that you are responsible for acquisition with the patient, for promoting the ethical committee's first project, and also to organize this in data set. And for these two subjects, the breast and the thyroid, you have completely responsible from all parts of the research. As I mentioned, the breast is the oldest one. You began it in 2011, and the thyroid is much more recent, and you have much less users than from the breast. But and it's also interrupted related to the acquisitions in the last year, because of the pandemic that have interrupted anything related to the, things that have participation of a number of persons. But even with this, this thyroid application is a very important and you have for us, because you have a great interchange, a great collaboration with other part of our university, especially with the persons with the endocrinology department, of internal medicine department, and with the radiology department. And even very recently, it begins exactly with the same time of the PRINT project. You have very good results. One of them is related to the possibility of use this infrared image for decide if there is some problems in the thyroid, and use it related to the symmetry of the image, a special kind of symmetry, and the other, not exactly perfect symmetry, but symmetry related to infrared distribution in the skin. And the other, if to see if this could be a nodule or anything bad in the thyroid. And even in this beginning of the research, we have very good results. We have a publication from medicine journal with very high impact factor. And also you have even works more related to the computer that is also very productive and in a very good journal as well. And when you try to see in which conditions of the patient, like distribution of the other tissue, like fat tissue, and the position of and size of the nodule, that turn possible to see the difference between one point of the skin and the other point, and see if this happens. But and also you have not only these publications in this journal that was from this year, but also in the last year, you have some works in conference more related to the computer aspect of this. So I think that is a very, very interesting area for collaboration, and show how is important this aspect, that I think that is important for it. This is the main point of the PRINT project. Another type of image, as I have mentioned, is related to the breast image, and I was also having this collaboration with the other departments of our university, especially the radiological department. and other aspects of the medicine, especially related to the human and children care. It is a graduating school, a master course in our university, and I only think here about the pre-processing of the first part of this process. That because in the other parts of them of this process, we have a student in the afternoon that you talk about. But for the first part, that is the part related to the registration and also related to the extraction of the region of interest, you have the participations not only with Professor Deborah and Professor Sanchez that is related to the talk that the student will mention in the afternoon, but you also have collaboration with other universities in the south of Brazil, in the Paraná state, related to also in the pre-processing to the automatic acquisition, automatic definition of what is the region of interest for the breast analysis related to the infrared examinations. As I have mentioned, related to the breast, this first part, this pre-processing is related to the breast, okay, but when I'm considering here is this aspect most concerning to the rest of the process, that is to the diagnosis, early diagnosis of the detection of cancer. Related to these aspects that you are done with collaboration with Professor Deborah and also with Professor Sanchez in University Rei Carlos. We'll talk more, and of our students talk more. Adriel will talk more in the afternoon, so I stop here to mention about this, the rest of this part. But even in infrared image, you also are open to other subjects like this that just begin and have stopped related to the pandemic, that was related to assessment of a brain tumor area during the surgery, during the operation, and was beginning with the persons in the neurosurgery department, where they use the infrared image to see if it is possible to do more resection during the operation. Oh, sorry, what's happened? More resection during the operation, or they are resecting some aspect that have functionality, that have some problem in functionality. So this is how is the appearance of the brain, unopened brain during the surgery. If you see this open brain in the infrared, and they are using it to define the area in the brain with yet have some parts that could be a cancer. But it is only a type of possible use of infrared imaging. You are really open to a lot of other aspects related to this kind of use of image. Another type of image that you have had collaboration along these years, and especially since the beginning of the project, you have very good results, is related to the X-ray. And one of them that is especially interesting is related to the use of X-ray in the lung. And in this case, you have begin a research with Professor Célio Albuquerque related to the diagnosis of the pneumonia of COVID-19 using public database. That is really have very nice results, and already you have a publication in this year. But I don't talk too much about this because, again, the next talk is related about this aspect of the research of the image processing related to X-ray or the diagnosis of COVID-19 in lung image, X-ray lung image. But you also use X-ray for another types of applications. And one type of application that you have very good collaboration here in Brazil is with the oral or dental image. And in these, you have had very recently, two very good publications in very good journals. But, and also you use X-ray for breast, that is mammography. And in this mammography, you also have a very good collaborations, but in this case with Ecuador, with Latin America. With dental, our cooperation is with the university, with a public university in the Rio de Janeiro, that is where it's a university of the state of Rio de Janeiro, and with the persons of National Laboratory of Scientific Computations, that is LNCC. This research is related to identification of part of a special type of dental X-ray to see if this part, with this X-ray, you can detect bone loss or evaluate this bone loss. And also to improve the resolutions, because this is a very small radiography of the mouth or a part of the mouth, and you improve the resolution of these using CNN networks to increase the possibility of diagnosis. This aspect is completely open to collaboration because it uses convolutional neural network. And as I have seen, a number of the colleagues, especially the colleagues in the United Kingdom, have applications related to artificial intelligence. So could be a possibility. And from now, you have work in the pre-processing of the image and use the deep learning for a number of models of CNN that is already published in another work. And you have had very good results, as I have mentioned, even with two very nice publications very recently, in the end of the last year, in the beginning of this one, related to this result of CNN for this type of X-ray image. Another type of image that you use and you have worked with is with computer tomography, CT. And this type of image we have used especially for collaboration with the person of our university in Biomedical Center that is related to a project of Professor Nazaré Rocha, that is related to identification of, for textures, identification of different areas in the lung, of slices of the lung, related to this texture and a number of lung disease. And because the expectations is that it's possible to identify degree of aerations of this different part of the lung and the relation of this diagnosis of these different disease. You also have in the last year, as a result, a paper in a conference, and the idea here is to identify automatically this different degree of aeration of each slice of the lung automatically using what a process named region growing, but using it in a parallel situation with the GPU. This research is we have in this research also the collaboration of Professor Célio and Professor Esteban, both participating in this spring project. And very recently, after the beginning of the pandemic in the last year, I consider in the middle of the last year, you have begun to work with a very different for me type of imaging. That is an image from gamma ray, that is image from nuclear resonance, especially the image named scintillography, because this type of examination is a very complex, is a very important for the persons in the cardiovascular science postgraduate program in our university. And is an examinations that take a long time from the patients, and sometimes related to the bad position or other aspects of the of that could occur during the examination related to a number of possibilities of the body of the patients, of the reaction to the medicine that they have to put in their vein to make this possibility of reaction for the nuclear acquisition. They have to sometimes, it take a long time, but they don't have good results, and it's possible to see in the middle if it's not necessary to go to the end to see that you have a bad evaluation. So we have begun new research with Professor Claudio Tinoco from this type that use very much this type of examination in our university hospital to see that it's possible to make a revision of the results of this type of image acquisition. And even this has been very recently. You have already have 2 publications. One is related to this aspect that you could interrupt in the beginning, not going more than the first 1/30 of the acquisitions. And this is very important because they can pass to the next patient in the queue and have to, using this is promote very use of this equipment in the hospital. And as you see, even with very, very recent works and very in not many acquisitions, not many, you don't have yet organized the database, you have more than 80% of good results in this provision. using simple possibility of decisions like SVM, using very simple features that we extract for image, like the LBP, that is a very simple way to, is only one type of feature possible to extract of this very complex type of imaging. So it's a very promising new area of research for us, and maybe change the machine learning of the supervised or unsupervised way or to form of decision. You can improve even more the possibility of these examinations. In this very new type of image, you also have working with this nuclear resonance group related to identification of scintigraphic image for bone metastasis automatically. So you are yet preparing the final project to the ethical committees of Minister of Health in Brazil. But the preliminary results is even very nice, with one publication even beginning in the middle of the last year, even with these ad hoc conditions of restriction of research with patients related to this pandemic situation here in Brazil or in all world. And finally, you have related to this SPRING project and to related to image and health. You have also working with synthetic image, especially image for virtual reality applications related to health. But in this case is for application related to learning and promote experience for learn how to do things related to biopsies and things related to cutting human tissues. In situations that it is important for things like biopsies, you have to do it for breast biopsies or for lumbar puncture, and also from anesthesia. So this is some reference. Of course, there is other type of image that I don't mention, but I think that it's enough for begin the collaboration and for promote maybe the initial of some more some more things among us. So thank you very much. And I don't have seen if I have something in the chat, but I hope Leticia.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Aura, for the very nice presentation. And I have a question for you. My question is, based on your experience and your opinion, which of these methodology is closest to being used in daily clinical practice? Which is more promising to use more soon?
I think that all of them, in fact, because each one of them have the idea is from the medical doctor that has interacted more with us, that you have more collaboration. So I think that all of them, and if you include in the, let's consider that you are considered more the image acquisitions. If you include not only image, but also patient data, the possibility of you don't use in the decision only image aspect, but you can include a number of other aspects of the patient history, and things like that. That is exactly what are including now in this related to the, in this project related to the, in this one. You are now trying to include all the patient data and in all of others as well, as the student in the afternoon maybe will mention that they want that will talk more about the breast, that is the breast for this project related to the breast for identification and diagnosis of cancer, for instance. If you could include, of course, our acquisition and our, the things that I work mostly is with this type of image, because this is a very, very complex in the point of the view of image process, because it's an image of low resolution that they present a lot of other problems that you don't see, for instance, in MRI or CT image. That's present very wide resolution in the aspect of anatomy aspect. But this type of image have very little aspect related to the anatomy. So you have to use a lot of aspect of image processing in this. For it's almost like that of scintillography, that it's related to the resolution is very badly imaged. But so you have to include a lot of processing related to image to improve. But anytime that you include more aspects, for instance, in this one, if you can include mammography, ultrasonography, if you include other examination and even other data that the physician do, you can do now, or have, or the patient, the history of the patient, the possibility of correct diagnosis, or even decide for or make new relations, or have is even much more important for all of them. Even it is very new that it will be the next talk of Paulo, like to make a propaganda that is related to diagnosis of COVID. You are now using it for only, Paulo, you mentioned only the X-ray, thorax X-ray, in only one of this X-ray, one acquisition of the X-ray. But the next student is using this with ultrasound. If you can use CT, much better. And you can use other type of acknowledgement of the patient, which much better the diagnosis. Okay, I hope. I hope.
Okay, thank you.
So all of them have immediate possibility of being used.
Very nice, very nice. I think your work is a good example of association between computer science and health for people, for the population, for the health. It's a very, very, very beautiful work. Thank you and congratulations. I don't know if you I don't know if we have more questions here. No. So I think we go to the next speaker.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Aura. I think you should to stop to share the screen, Professor Aura.
She has already stopped, Leticia. You cannot see your screen.
Okay, so it's my internet, sorry. So the next speaker is Paulo Lacerda. Paulo holds a bachelor's and master's degree in computer science from our university, Fluminense Federal University. He is currently a PhD student at our university, UF. He has previously worked as an IT specialist at IBM and Global Hits. His main research interests include visual computing, artificial intelligence, medical images, and multimedia networks. Thank you so much, Paulo, for being here. And
okay, thank you for
guest.
the introduction, Leticia. I'm a PhD student under supervision of professors Aura Conci and Célio Albuquerque. And good morning and good afternoon for everyone, depending on where you are. And I'm happy to be here and to talk about my work on medical image analysis and deep learning applied to the diagnosis of COVID-19. So let me share my screen, just a second. Can you see it?
Yes, it's perfect.
Great. So in this session, I'll talk about the hyperparameter optimization for COVID-19 pneumonia diagnosis based on chest CT. Fortunately, vaccination for COVID-19 has advanced in most countries, but the disease is still a global problem, right? So, for example, as of Monday this week, there have been more than 122 million cases of COVID-19 worldwide, according to the World Health Organization. And the RT-PCR test is considered the gold standard for COVID-19 diagnosis. And chest CT, chest computed tomography, can be used additionally to support the diagnosis. So the main objective of this work is to propose a novel method based on deep transfer learning and hyperparameter optimization techniques on a publicly available data set of CT images for the computer-aided diagnosis for COVID-19. First, I'll talk a little about the data we used to evaluate our proposal. So in order to perform the work, 3 public data sets with chest compute tomographies were combined. The first data set is the MOSMED data that has 856 COVID-19 scans. It's distributed in 4 categories according to the severity degree, the COVID-19 severity degree. And in my experiments, all MOSMED data, all the 4 categories were labeled as a COVID-19 case, because in the first moment, I was focused mostly in detecting the COVID. The second user data set is from the Luna 16 challenge that has 888 chest tomography exams with lung nodules. And the third data set is the one built from OSIC challenge. It has 177 chest CT scans from patients with fibrosis. And all 3 data sets together produce a combined data set of 2,175 CT scans. Let me go to the next. Data preprocessing. So each tomography scans has a specific number of slices. It can range between 200, 300. So what we did, during data preprocessing, we chose the 10 more centrally positioned slices of each scan. They are typically the slices that present the largest pulmonary area. And the scans slice of the entire data set were then split into 3 subsets: train, validation, and tests. The combined data set is in balance because the total number of scans without COVID-19 is greater than the number with COVID-19. So The majority class was undersampled in order to minimize bias during training, and the minority class was oversampled in the validation and test subsets to do the evaluation. Still in data preprocessing, and I did some data augmentation. The training subsets go through an augmentation process when fed to the training loop. The idea is to increase the size of the training data set, also reducing overfitting. In the augmentation process, each image is randomly flipped horizontally and rotated. Now the network, we use it. The network architecture is based on the following components. First, a backbone model pre-trained on ImageNet dataset to do feature extraction, followed by a number of inception modules, and then 2 full connect layers, followed by a softmax layer to perform the classification. The inception model is a component proposed by Google in the inception network architecture, where each module works as a small network. There is a building block that can be connected to other modules to build a larger convolution network. Hyperparameter optimization. So what is it? The performance of a neural network is directly related to its training. But before we do the training process, some parameters must be established, such as the architecture, the learning rate, the optimizer, and these parameters are called hyperparameters, right? So in order to choose the best values for our model hyperparameters, meaning the backbone architecture, the number of inception modules, the number of neurons in dense layers, the learning rate, a hyperparameter optimization technique called hyperband was used. What's a hyperband? Hyperband is an optimization technique. It's inspired on the problem of a slot machine with multiple levers to pull, that each one with a different payout, and you have to find the best sequence. Basically, it's a sequential decision problem where at each stage, one out of infinite arms is pulled, and a reward is obtained. According to the chosen sequence. Okay. Results with hyperband. I was able to search for the best hyperparameter configuration. That is the VGG16 backbone, 5 inception modules, 128 neurons in the 2 fully connected layers, and a learning rate of 0.0027. The figure on the bottom shows the gradient weighted class activation mapping, also known as GradCAM. This is a technique that involves superimposing a heat map over the input image, and the heat map indicates how important each area of the image is for the classification decision of a specific class, in this case, the COVID-19. So you can notice that the areas with ground glass opacities and consolidations that are typical findings in patients with COVID-19 are highlighted as indicated by the red outline. Still no results. The table on top shows the precision, sensitivity, and F1 score, and also accuracy achieved by our best model configuration. It achieved 97% sensitivity, being equivalent to human level performance on CTs, and presents the best sensitivity compared to RT-PCR and other methods based on deep learning applied to COVID-19 diagnosis based on chest CT. So as already mentioned by Professor Aura, we published a paper in Sensory Special Issue, Biomedical Signal Processing for Disease Diagnosis. And the novelty and contribution of the paper are an automatic methodology based on deep transfer learning and hyperparameter optimization techniques on a publicly available data sets of CT images for computer-aided diagnosis for COVID-19. Well, this is still a work in progress related to my thesis. So I still have some work to do. Like, for example, the use of the cross-validation technique to evaluate the model accuracy in a more robust way. So we'll also evaluate our approach based on these statistical methods. And in the near future, you also expect to improve our method, adapting it to other scenarios, like classifying the case of COVID-19 according to the severity of the case, which is something very relevant for the treatment of the disease. Also do COVID-19 diagnosis based on ultrasound images, as Professor Aura also mentioned. We also think to apply it to support the diagnosis of other lung disease, such as tuberculosis and common pneumonia. Well, and there's also other deep learning techniques that we're planning to use, such as extracting features learned from the convolutional network and use it as input to recurrent neural networks to take advantage of the temporal characteristics of the tomography scans. These are some of the reference we mentioned, and well, that's it. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed the presentation.
Thank you so much, Paulo. Actually, we have a question for you from Professor Aline Pais. The question is, have you checked if the data distributions remains the same comparing training and tests as you employ different sample techniques for those samples?
Yes, when we did the data preparation, we had to be very careful regarding not generate data leakage, that is having patients' data, the same patient's data in the training and the test subsets. So we did this during data preparation, and we also had after doing the oversampling and undersampling, oversampling on tests and undersampling on validation, the train validation and test split changed a little bit, but not in a ratio that impacted results.
Okay, thank you. More questions? For Paulo? No?
Can I ask a question?
Oh, sure.
Okay. It's more like perhaps a comment, but we can discuss a little bit. So it's related to this issue of the oversampling and the sampling, the training versus the test set. I think it's important to distinguish, because it's fine to do oversampling and the sampling in the training set, no problem. But it's more controversial to do oversample or undersample. You have done undersample, I believe, in the test set, because in principle, the test set should reflect the original distribution of the data as much as possible. And when you do, in your case, oversampling in the test set, you are effectively transforming what was originally a very difficult classification problem due to the class imbalance into an easier classification problem because now we have it closer to 50-50 balance distribution. So I would argue it's a bit unfair to do that. I would suggest it to apply oversampling and sampling only in the training validations, but not in the test set to preserve the integrity of the test set.
Yes, this makes sense. We did the oversampling in the training because it was very imbalanced. The COVID-19 cases were not enough to the model learn, and we increased the number of the COVID-19 class, basically duplicating some samples and applying that data augmentation during the training. So it changed a little bit the aspect of the image, but in the test and validation, we decided to undersampling in order to consider it's a more fair comparison, because but it's a controversial aspect for sure, because in real life it's imbalanced, right? You have much less case COVID-19 case than normal case, and that's why I believe that applying a more elaborate evaluation like the cross-validation will be something to improve the results, the evaluation of the method.
Okay, thank you, Professor Alex, for the question. Any questions? So I think, thank you, Paulo, again. And Deborah, I think there is a question for me.
Yes.
It's from Nielson Pereira. And the question is, Professor Leticia, how many images were used in machine learning processing the bipolar disorder papers? And which image formats and can DICOM formats be used? So I will try to answer. First of all, we used beta images. So we pre-process all the images, and we use beta image, one image per subject. And each image has 1,000 of values because you have one value for voxel. And this value represents the association, this is the beta, the association between the brain signal and the experimental condition, which was in this case the expectance of a reward. The participants were in the machine doing a task. So the beta image, I think this is the first question. For the format is the beta image. Can DICOM format be used? I think you can use DICOM, but you shouldn't. Why? Because you have to remove the noise. For instance, I'm talking about fMRI, functional neuroimage. So you can remove the red movement, for instance. There is a lot of noise in the image. So the DICOM is too gross. I think it's not the good option for this kind of analysis. And that's it. I hope I answered the question. Deborah, I think it's with you.
Thank you very much, Leticia. I would like to thank all the speakers in this morning session of our international workshop on artificial intelligence and innovative solutions for digital healthcare. Well, if anyone has any more comments, so we have a few minutes if we still have something to discuss. If not, I would like to thank the audience that had followed us on YouTube too with questions. Thank you very much. And we are going to...
Professora,
Yes?
o professor Pablo ainda está aí?
Mateus, yes, Professor Pablo is here.
Tem uma pergunta que o Nelson fez antes, só que não deu tempo para o professor responder.
Oh, could you play? Você pode, por favor, colocar no chat aqui no Zoom?
Eu cheguei a colocar no Zoom, só um minuto.
Pablo, are you still there? I think we have one question for you.
Hello. Hello. Is this...
Just a minute, Pablo, please.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, what was the question? Oh, it was for me, first of all.
Yeah, I think it is for you, but Mateus is trying to find the question. Just a few moments.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sure, of course.
Pronto, tá aí, professora.
Okay, so it's here. Okay, I think it's a question from Petruccio. Yes, he did it at the very end of your presentation, so we haven't asked you. So he says, Professor Pablo Cesar, did you evaluate facial expressions or facial gestures during the first part of your research?
I see. Well, basically, in those ones, they were, if it was in a theater or in other places, it was quite a dark environment. So we didn't have cameras that they were actually infrared or thermal cameras at that moment. So we couldn't really do much about it. So of course, typically for emotion recognition, face expression is one of the main mechanisms that is used. But in those cases, it was really dark places, so it would be quite difficult to actually figure out and find the faces. I think now with more thermal cameras and that could happen. Actually, it could be a bit easier. But still, as well, maybe from a more privacy aspect, here what we were doing is that we were giving just sensors to people, so we had nothing to do with. I mean, we didn't know who was anyone, which was just free away sensors. Whereas if we are starting using cameras, it might be a lot of other issues that we are recording in a place, we might not have the rights for doing that, and so on and so forth. But we didn't do, but indeed it would have been very interesting to see, and that could have been even almost a ground truth.
Okay, thank you, Pablo. Maybe this is an interesting thing that maybe we could collaborate, because we are working with trying to capture facial expressions for understanding people emotion when they see some kind of content. So we could maybe correlate that information with the information collected by other kinds of sensors. Yep. And maybe this could be used maybe as a ground truth to, well, at least an indication of ground truth to understand if they're smiling or have a different kind of facial.
Electromyography can be an option, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's just very interesting to see how they will correlate or not, and the mappings, and yes, that will be very, very interesting.
Okay, then. Thank you very much again, Pablo, for your...
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. Unfortunately, I cannot stay in the afternoon because here it's becoming a bit late. I need to go home and all this stuff. But thank you very much for the invitation. It was really interesting, actually, to hear everything that is happening. It's very, very, very interesting.
Okay, no problem. Thank you again. And we're going, of course, to be in contact and maybe to strengthen the collaboration among our groups here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so Leticia, I think I'm going to finish our YouTube transmission now. Thank you again.
Yes.
To be back at 2 o'clock.
Thank you, everyone.